Sometimes, loneliness doesn't arrive when we are physically alone. It arrives when we are sitting in a crowded room, laughing at the right moments, replying to messages, nodding during conversations, and still feeling completely unseen. It arrives when we are surrounded by people who care about us, yet something inside whispers, "I don't belong here. No one really knows me." For many people, this kind of loneliness is confusing. It feels unfair. It feels ungrateful. And often, it feels shameful. After all, how can someone feel lonely when they are not alone? But emotional loneliness is not about the number of people around you. It is about the absence of emotional safety, connection, and resonance. It is about feeling like your inner world has no place to rest in the presence of others. It is about feeling emotionally isolated even when socially included. And for those who experience this regularly, it can quietly shape their relationships, self-image, and mental health in ways they may not even realize. Many people who feel lonely in company learned very early in life that their emotions were inconvenient, misunderstood, or unsafe to express. Maybe they grew up in environments where feelings were minimized. Maybe they were praised for being strong, independent, or easy to deal with. Maybe their sadness was ignored, their excitement dismissed, or their fears brushed aside. Over time, they learned a powerful lesson. Connection requires performance, not authenticity. So they became good at adapting. They learned how to read rooms. They learned how to become what others needed. They learned how to listen more than they spoke. They learned how to shrink uncomfortable emotions. They learned how to smile through confusion, hurt, and disappointment. And from the outside, they appeared socially successful, friendly, approachable, reliable. But inside, something essential went missing: the feeling of being emotionally held. When a person grows up without consistent emotional attunement, they often internalize the belief that their real self is not worthy of attention. They begin to separate their public self from their private self. One becomes acceptable. The other becomes hidden. Over time, this split creates loneliness, even in loving environments, because no one is actually interacting with the whole person. They are interacting with a carefully managed version. In adulthood, this pattern often shows up in subtle ways. These individuals may have many acquaintances, but few people they feel deeply known by. They may be the friend everyone goes to for advice, yet rarely share their own struggles. They may be present at gatherings, but emotionally absent. They may feel exhausted after social interactions without understanding why. They may leave conversations feeling empty instead of nourished. This happens because connection is not created through proximity. It is created through vulnerability. And vulnerability feels dangerous to someone who learned early that being emotionally open leads to rejection, disappointment, or invisibility. Many people who experience this kind of loneliness develop what psychologists call emotional self-reliance. They learn to process everything alone. They comfort themselves. They motivate themselves. They regulate themselves. On the surface, this looks like strength, but underneath, it is often a survival strategy. It says, if I don't need anyone, I can't be abandoned. Over time, this creates an internal paradox. They deeply crave closeness, yet feel uncomfortable when it appears. They want to be understood, yet struggle to explain themselves. They long for intimacy, yet feel exposed when someone gets too close. So they remain in relationships that feel safe but shallow. They choose familiarity over depth. They accept partial connection instead of risking full rejection. Another factor behind this loneliness is hyper-awareness. Many emotionally lonely people are highly sensitive to social cues. They notice tone shifts, facial expressions, pauses, energy changes. They scan constantly for signs of disapproval. This often comes from growing up in unpredictable environments where emotional safety depended on reading others accurately. As adults, this hyper-awareness makes them excellent empathizers. They anticipate needs, they avoid conflict, they smooth tensions. But it also keeps them emotionally guarded. When you are constantly monitoring others, you are rarely fully present with yourself. You are performing instead of experiencing. This leads to a subtle form of disconnection from one's own emotions. Many people who feel lonely in groups struggle to identify what they are actually feeling. They may say they are fine when they are overwhelmed. They may say they are tired when they are sad. They may say they are busy when they are lonely. Emotional language feels foreign because it was never safely practiced. Without emotional fluency, intimacy becomes difficult. It is hard to let someone know you when you do not fully know yourself. It is hard to ask for support when you are unsure what you need. So the loneliness continues, not because people do not care, but because the inner world remains inaccessible. There is also often a deep fear of burdening others. Many emotionally lonely individuals believe their struggles are too much. They worry they will be seen as dramatic, needy, or weak. So they filter themselves. They share highlights, not hardships. They offer support, but rarely request it. They present resilience instead of reality. This creates an invisible wall. Others assume they are fine. They respect their independence. They do not intrude. And unintentionally, the lonely person feels even more unseen. In romantic relationships, this pattern can be especially painful. They may love deeply but struggle to feel secure. They may doubt their partner's understanding. They may feel emotionally alone, even in committed partnerships. They may hesitate to express needs. They may withdraw during conflict. They may interpret misunderstandings as proof that they are fundamentally unlovable. Because early emotional neglect teaches a quiet lesson. Connection is fragile, and you must earn it. Over time, chronic emotional loneliness can affect mental health. It is linked to anxiety, depression, low self-worth, and emotional exhaustion. When people feel unseen for long periods, they begin to question their value. They may think, if no one really knows me, maybe there's nothing worth knowing. This belief is not true, but it can feel painfully real. Yet this pattern is not a life sentence. It is an adaptation. And adaptations can be gently unlearned. Healing begins with recognizing that your loneliness is not a personal flaw. It is evidence of a nervous system that learned to survive without consistent emotional support. It is proof of resilience, not deficiency. The first step is reconnecting with yourself, learning to notice your feelings without judging them, naming them, honoring them, allowing them space. When you build a relationship with your own emotions, you create a foundation for sharing them. The second step is practicing small vulnerability, not dramatic confessions, not sudden emotional exposure, just honest moments. Saying, that actually hurt. Saying, I've been feeling disconnected lately. Saying, I could use some support. These small truths slowly teach your brain that openness does not always lead to danger. The third step is choosing safe people. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Look for those who listen without rushing, who validate without minimizing, who stay present without fixing. Emotional safety is built through consistency, not grand gestures. And finally, it is learning that you are allowed to take up emotional space. You are allowed to be complicated. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to be seen in your softness and your strength. Loneliness in crowds is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you have been carrying yourself alone for a long time. It is the quiet ache of someone who learned to survive independently and now longs to be met. You do not have to disappear to belong. You do not have to be strong all the time to be worthy. Connection is not something you earn. It is something you allow. And every time you choose honesty over hiding, presence over performance, and self-compassion over self-criticism, you take one step closer to the kind of belonging that does not disappear when the room gets quiet. The kind that lives inside you, the kind that reminds you, you were never meant to carry everything alone.